John Smoltz, this time of the year. It's almost like John Smoltz is to brackets what Tiger was to the rest of the field back in, his prime. John is that good. And there are some people suggesting, let's go John Smoltz or the field. Who would you have? Now, I'm going to go with the field. John also had a Hall of Fame career as a baseball pitcher as well. But more importantly, he's great in brackets. Hi, John. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. What a great intro. That's probably the best intro you've given me in a long time.
Yeah. I mean, you would rather be known for being great in brackets than you would as a Hall of Fame pitcher. Am I right?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And I should have retired last year. You know I should.
You should have. You had your chance. You blew it.
That's as good as it gets. I don't know how many people had the Final Four, 14 out of 16. And just I contemplated it long and hard. And I said, it really should, and I should retire. But I'm going to give it one more shot and maybe go out, after this year.
You could have been like Peyton Manning.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I thought about that many different ways, but people are asking me for advice a lot. Maybe I could just be a consultant from this point on.
You could be maybe you could serve on the Selection Sunday.
Oh, boy, would I love to do that after, again, accused of being biased. Michigan State, how do they not get a 1 seed? But it's irrelevant. We don't want to go into that. But I just don't know how they didn't get a 1 seed.
We were also looking at the one and done. You came out of high school and then you went to Lakeland, Florida, right? The Tigers, and you were in the 20s, 22nd round, 21st round. How much did you get paid?
22nd round.
How much did you get paid?
Well, I ended up getting, believe it or not, close to first-round money. So it was $100,000 back at that day was first-round money. And I was excited. I bought a red Z24 Cavalier. I couldn't get any more, on top of the world with that red Z24 hatchback. And, I kept all that money, didn't spend any of it. And then, of course, life took me to the Atlanta Braves. But, yeah, that was different times back then. I'm actually in Osceola Park taking care of the Astros on the 30-30 for the network. And 30 years ago, I was here playing in A-ball against the Astros.
Would things have been different had you gone to college for 2 years? If there was a mandatory go to college for 2 years or 1 year?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. You're talking about, do I go NBA or do I, go to big leagues? Because I was going to play for Judd Heathcote in basketball. But in all seriousness, I think the reality of baseball and basketball being so different because there is a farm system. There's a development system for baseball. And colleges back in that time, weren't as good. The programs weren't as good. So if you're a young high school player, you opted to go from high school to the farm system and get in it, in the system. But for basketball, there really isn't. I know there's the developmental league, but it's not the same. And so, you're talking about some incredible athletes that don't develop fundamentally as well and sit a lot of time. Forget the stars, forget the LeBron James. We always focus on them, the guys who go from high school and dominate. But how about everybody else? How about the guys that never make it? And that's what 2 years of college would do so much better for those guys, because some guys miscalculate, where they're going to be, and the rest of their life they spend trying to chase that dream and never making it.
He's John Smoltz, the Hall of Famer. John covering the Astros, Tigers, Braves, Nationals. Next 4 days, MLB Network's 30 Clubs, 30 Days series. What do you make of Goose Gossage and Bryce Harper with the game being tired, and then Goose, the Hall of Famer, saying Bryce Harper knows nothing about the game?
I get that. This is going to seem like a cheesy answer, but I get both sides of it within balance. It's hard to be pouring all in one camp, right? I get both arguments. I do. I'm more close to Goose Gossage in the time that I played than I am Bryce Harper. And I think everything is in context of what happens. The reason we get so bent out of shape with emotion, it's not that we don't want people to show emotion. It's when. Is the score 8-1 or is it 2-1 game winner in the ninth inning? I think anytime you bring yourself, imagine if I was a pitcher and I struck you out and I said, you stink, sit down. And that was my way of showing emotion. There'd be a lot of hitters lining up that couldn't wait to hit a line drive off my chest. Well, when a guy jumps up and down and hits a home run, he's not saying I'm the best and look at me, but that's exactly what he's displaying. So I get it. I mean, look, I was an emotional guy. I loved it, but business-like attitude and celebrate was the fashion back then. Now as a broadcaster, I get to see these guys at a different level. I mean, I just interviewed Carlos Gomez. I totally get how excited he is to play the game, and he's a guy that can be controversial on how you look at him by his antics, but he's an emotional guy that loves playing baseball. How can you fault him for that, with the exception of a couple moments that end up heating up both sides of the team? So, look, this debate will go on for quite some time. And again, I may not have been as adamant maybe as Goose Gossage was, but he's right in some of the things that he says, and I'm sure Bryce Harper's right in some of the things.
Well, Goose Gossage can't say Bryce Harper knows nothing about the game, because Bryce Harper could say Goose knows nothing about today's game. And Bryce Harper's talking about today's game where he says it's tired. What do you think he means by I think tired means boring?
Yeah, and that might be. I mean, his translation might be different than your and I's. But here's what I would say in fairness. I don't know that the younger players know about the history of the game. They don't know who came before them, who's made this game great. I think that's a shame. If you brought up in this game and you're a young generation with all technology and all you think about is me, 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 me. I think for Bryce Harper, this is a prodigy. This is one of the greatest players in the game, and he wants to be able to showcase that greatness in his own desirable way. And not everyone's going to be like that. But when you look at team sports, which is not tennis, this is not golf, the best teams usually win the championships. And when you talk about teams, there's a lot of things that go into that, chemistry and all kinds of different things. It's not. You rarely see a bunch of teams that have a bunch of individuals doing exactly what that emotional statement is, and they win the championship. So there's some balance. It really is balance. And for Bryce Harper, man, what an unbelievable year. And if he wants to showcase his talents in a certain way, then so be it. I think it's funny because each pitcher-hitter combination that has these arguments has an opportunity to silence the other guy by getting him out. If you don't want to see somebody dance at home plate or throw their bat up in the air, get him out.
Yeah, but my problem with pitchers is when somebody shows somebody up, then they get a ball thrown at their head. It's not like a hitter can go, hey, I don't like what you just did. I'm going to take a bat to your head. It's not fair. Not fair what pitchers do.
You're right. And it doesn't happen in the American League. It doesn't happen in the National League as much because guess what? That pitcher's got a bat. You know, in the American League, you're more apt to have those scenarios play out. You know, the ruler of the mound determining what the ethics of baseball should or shouldn't be. But again, when emotion's involved, you got to understand people make bad decisions, to your point, because they're emotional as well. And when they have time to sit back and realize, that's when good managers come and say, hey, young man, we're not going to tolerate that act on the mound. But the demonstrative way of pitching, imagine if it got out of hand and we had just all kinds of, when you strike somebody out, doing a dance on the mound. Yeah, I just think hitters would have a little problem with that. And that's why it's just balance. It's context. You got to know the score, space, and time to determine when you show or go over the top in your emotion.
Who bothered you the most with showing you up? Did you have a moment?
No, well, you know what's funny, and you can go back in the archives and check this out. Carlos Perez, when he was pitching with the Expos, I said, I'll be darned. You know, he was the most demonstrative guy we had back in the day. He was so much different than Mark the Bird Fidrich because Carlos was doing the shimmy and the shake. And every time, you know, I told my teammates, I said, if I ever face that guy, watch what I do. Oh, you won't do it, Smoltz. You won't do it. So watch. I will do my mock version of his shimmy when I strike him out. And I did it in the Fulton County Stadium, and the whole Montreal Expos bench fell down on the ground laughing when I did my little mock shimmy to Carlos Perez. Now, he had told our catcher, Eddie Perez, we had to face each other back to back. He said, I will sit on the mound when I strike out Smoltz the next time I face him. He was all in good-natured and fun. And so I had like a 9-pitch at bat. I was in defense mode from the I was not going to let him strike me out. I didn't want to see him sit down on the mound. And I didn't. He didn't strike me out.
Yeah. Well, you were always a tough out, John.
No, that one time I was, because I was not. That's the byproduct of getting an opportunity to do something like that. You don't want to have retribution given by the other side.
All right, your final four? Well, your final three. We know Michigan State's in there.
Yeah, how about that? This year, finally, more people than just me are going to be picking Michigan State to win it all.
That's true.
And they got a good balance. But I went boring this year. I'm just going to lay it on the line because I'm going to retire soon. I basically pick who I want to win, just so people can know, and who I want Michigan State to face. So my strategy is not anything other than that. But I've got the Final Four: Kansas, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Michigan State. Very boring, very to the mark. And I think the two best players in the country will match off in the finals. That's my hope. Oklahoma's.
Buddy
I always
Hield.
struggle with his last name. Healed, yeah, and Valentine with Michigan State. I think it'd be an exciting finals, but along the way, I think as much parity that exists in the tournament, I still think it's going to play out more closer to the best this year than upset city. That's just my prediction.
I'm watching the video here where you strike out. Yeah, Perez. Yeah. That's funny. That's
So I did it, and the players didn't think I would do it. So I'm a man of my word.
Hey, we'll check in with you. Have fun during the tournament, and thanks for joining us, bud.
All right, I look forward to it.
All right, Johnny Smoltz, Hall of Famer, Major League Baseball Network analyst. 30 clubs, 30 days for the Major League Baseball Network, Astros, Tigers, Braves, Nationals,